Imagine a courtroom clash where parents kill their child's killer in court. Instead of relying on the legal system, they took matters into their own hands, resulting in a gripping life-and-death showdown that could have come straight out of a movie. However, the question remains, were these parents who killed their child's killer in court righteous defenders or ruthless criminals? Marianne Bachmeier. In 1981, a German woman, Marianne Bachmeier, took matters into her own hands at the Lübeck District Court. She shot and killed Klaus Grabowski, the man on trial for the brutal rape and murder of her daughter, Anna. This act of vigilantism shocked the nation, as Marianne's actions were driven by grief and anger. Marianne Bachmeier, born on June 3, 1950, hails from Sarstedt, a small town near Hildesheim in West Germany. Her parents had sought refuge in the West from war-torn East Prussia after World War II. Her upbringing was steeped in conservatism and religiosity, with her father having a history as a member of the Waffen-SS, a paramilitary organization in Nazi Germany. However, he was far from the ideal parent, often seen as an authoritative figure, prone to heavy drinking, and frequenting a local bar near their home. Alcohol fueled his aggression, rendering their home far from pleasant. Unhappiness eventually led to her parents' divorce, and her mother found a new partner. Marianne's life took a darker turn as she was deemed a troubled adolescent by her stepfather, whom she described as dictatorial. Matters escalated to the point where her mother made the difficult decision to kick her out of the house. At just 16 in 1966, Marianne Bachmeier became a mother for the first time, giving her child up for adoption. A couple of years later, at the age of 18, she found herself pregnant once more, this time by her boyfriend. Tragically, her life took a harrowing turn when she became a victim of rape shortly before giving birth to her second child. Heart-wrenchingly, her second child, like the first, was also placed for adoption as an infant. In 1972, Marianne's life saw a glimmer of hope when she started a relationship with Christian Berthold, the manager of Tipasa, a pub where they both worked. At the age of 22, she became pregnant for the third time. On November 14, 1972, Marianne welcomed her third child, a daughter named Anna, into the world. She decided to raise Anna as a single mother, and this new responsibility meant that she often had to bring her daughter to work at the pub. Marianne was so dedicated to her work that she never felt the need to rush home after her regular hours behind the bar. Marianne Bachmeier's life was marked by a tumultuous journey through difficult circumstances, family strife, and personal trials. It was within this challenging backdrop that the events leading to the tragic act of vigilantism at the Lübeck District Court in 1981 unfolded, forever altering the course of her life. In two 1984 documentary films, No Time for Tears, The Bachmeier Case, and Anna's Mother, Marianne Bachmeier's life was laid bare. She was depicted as a single mother working late into the night and sleeping in till daybreak, leaving her 7-year-old daughter Anna to fend for herself during the day. Marianne, cognizant of her turbulent lifestyle, contemplated giving Anna up for adoption. Friends would later reveal that Marianne treated Anna more like a little adult than a child, burdening her with responsibilities from a very young age. The little girl often found herself sleeping in the bar while her mother reveled in the nightlife. According to a close friend of Marianne's, young Anna's life lacked the warmth of a loving family. Marianne Bachmeier was a struggling single mother trying to make ends meet, often at the expense of her daughter's well-being. It was a challenging and turbulent environment for Anna, who had to grow up far too quickly, her innocence lost amidst the tumultuous backdrop of her mother's life. On May 5, 1980, 7-year-old Anna, who loved cats, had a fight with her mom and decided to skip school. She went to visit a man named Klaus Grabowski, who had some cats in his house that she could play with. She thought he was a friend, but he was not. He was a 35-year-old butcher who had a dark and evil mind. He kidnapped Anna and took her to his home, where he did horrible things to her. He touched her in places she did not want to be touched, and he hurt her with his hands and his mouth. He choked her with a pair of tights that belonged to his fiancée, and he killed her. He did not care about Anna's life or her dreams. He only cared about his own sick pleasure. He tied Anna's body with ropes and put her in a box. He left the box on the shore of a canal where he hoped no one would find her. But someone did find her. His fiancée saw what he had done and called the police. She told them everything, and they arrested Grabowski and awaited trial. Grabowski, a man with a dark history, had been found guilty of sexually abusing 2 young girls in the past. Back in 1976, he made the choice to undergo chemical castration, a procedure aimed at reducing sexual urges, but it later emerged that he sought hormone treatment to undo its effects. Fast forward to his arrest, Grabowski claimed that Anna, his victim, intended to expose his prior crimes to her mother, using the threat to squeeze money out of him. Fearing a return to prison, he confessed that this fear drove him to commit the unthinkable act of taking her life. In a courtroom drama that unfolded on March 6, 1981, during the third day of the trial around 10 a.m., a startling act of vigilante justice took place. The protagonist, Bachmeier, secretly brought a Beretta 70 pistol into room 157 of the Lübeck District Court. There, with chilling precision, she aimed the weapon at Grabowski's back and pulled the trigger 7 times. 6 of those shots found their mark, and Grabowski was fatally wounded, meeting his end almost instantaneously. In a twist that defied expectation, Bachmeier made no attempt to resist arrest, lowering her weapon calmly, surrendering to the consequences of her shocking act. The incident sent shockwaves throughout West Germany, becoming one of the nation's most infamous cases of vigilante justice. Media coverage of the event was extensive, drawing television crews not just from across the country, but also from overseas to report on this sensational trial. Bachmeier, seizing an opportunity, sold her life story to the news magazine Stern for a sum of approximately 100,000 Deutsche Marks, using the proceeds to cover her legal expenses. During her time in custody, Bachmeier received an outpouring of support, with well-wishers sending messages, gifts, and flowers as an expression of understanding for her extreme actions. However, a divide emerged in public opinion, with some contending that a constitutional state should not endorse such vigilante justice, a viewpoint that gained traction when Stern published details about Bachmeier's personal life, including her first 2 children and her father's affiliation with the SS, casting doubt on her innocent mother image. The West German judicial system came under heavy criticism for allowing Grabowski, a man with a history of sexually abusing 2 girls, to receive hormone treatment to revive his libido, a decision that many viewed as deeply problematic. This tumultuous case not only exposed the depths of public anger and frustration, but also raised profound questions about justice, morality, and the limits of the legal system in dealing with heinous crimes. On November 2, 1982, Bachmeier found herself facing a murder charge in court, a weighty accusation indeed. However, as the legal proceedings unfolded, the prosecution eventually decided to drop this grave charge. After nearly a month of intense negotiations and deliberations, the courtroom board reached a significant decision. Fast forward 4 months from the commencement of the trial on March 2, 1983, the Circuit Court Chamber of the District Court of Lübeck delivered its verdict. Bachmeier, instead of being convicted of murder, was found guilty of manslaughter and also charged with unlawful possession of a firearm. It's worth noting that the court largely accepted the defense's argument that the act was not premeditated. The consequence of this ruling was a 6-year prison sentence handed down to Bachmeier. However, her incarceration proved to be shorter than that sentence, as she was released after serving 3 years behind bars. After tying the knot in 1985, Bachmeier and her husband embarked on a significant life change. 3 years later, they ventured to Accra, Ghana, taking up residence in a German community where her spouse taught at a German school. However, their union hit rocky shores, culminating in divorce in 1990. Following this, Bachmeier found herself in Sicily, working as a euthanasia aide in a hospice based in Palermo. It was in Sicily that she received the grim diagnosis of pancreatic cancer, which prompted her to return to her homeland, Germany. In 1994, a startling revelation unfolded as Bachmeier granted an interview to Deutschlandfunk radio station 13 years after the courtroom shooting. In the same year, her autobiography was published by the German publisher Schneeklut Verlag. Then, on September 21, 1995, she made a candid appearance on the television talk show Fliege on Das Erste. There, she openly admitted to the calculated shooting of Grabowski, citing a desire to enforce justice and prevent him from further spreading falsehoods about Anna. A former friend in a 2006 ARD documentary even claimed that Bachmeier had rehearsed the shooting in the basement under Tipasa after Anna's tragic demise. Throughout this tumultuous journey, Bachmeier remained unapologetic for her act of retribution. As her life neared its end, Bachmeier made an extraordinary request. She invited reporter Lucas Maria Boehmer from Norddeutscher Rundfunk to accompany her and document her final moments. On September 17, 1996, at the age of 46, Bachmeier succumbed to pancreatic cancer in a Lübeck hospital. Her final resting place lies alongside her daughter Anna in Lübeck's Bergtor Cemetery. Ellie Nessler. Elena Starr Nessler, born on August 2, 1952, is remembered as an American woman who made headlines for a shocking act of violence. In a courtroom, she fatally shot the man who stood accused of molesting her young son, Willie Nessler, back in 1988 when he was just 7 years old. The incident rocked the nation, capturing the attention of news outlets all across the United States. The man at the center of this grim tale was Daniel Mark Driver, a 35-year-old employee at a Christian camp. He faced allegations of sexually abusing young Willie. The explosive climax of this harrowing story occurred on April 2, 1993, in the Tuolumne County community of Jamestown. It was there that Elena Nessler, driven by anguish and anger, fired several shots into Driver's head and neck inside that courtroom. The shocking event not only ended Driver's life, but also ignited a fierce national debate about vigilantism. Elena Starr Nessler, born in the rugged hills surrounding Jamestown, California, was the eldest of 3 daughters in a coal miner's family. Her childhood was far from typical, as she spent her early years operating operating tractors for local ranchers, digging ditches, laying irrigation pipes, and tinkering with cars. Her mother would later recount these formative years in an interview with The Times in 1993. In her youth, she entered into a short-lived marriage and subsequent divorce, but her life took a different turn when she crossed paths with Bill Nessler, a gold miner and crop duster. Love blossomed, leading to their marriage and the birth of their son, Willie. The newlyweds, fueled by dreams of striking it rich, embarked on an adventure to Liberia, a West African nation in the midst of a gold rush. While in Liberia, Ellie Nessler gave birth to a daughter, but their pursuit of fortune took a dark twist when civil war erupted in the country. Fearing for her children's safety, she made the heart-wrenching decision to return to her homeland, leaving her husband behind in Liberia. Back in Tuolumne County, California, she found herself reliant on welfare checks and resorted to chopping wood to make ends meet, facing the harsh realities of single motherhood. It was a far cry from the golden dreams they had once chased. Trouble began to brew when young Willie exhibited unusual behavior after attending a summer camp where a man named Daniel Mark Driver worked as a dishwasher. Concerned family members took notice, and it wasn't long before Willie confided in his aunt during a sleepover. He revealed a distressing secret. Driver had subjected him to what he described as nasty things. The year 1989 marked a turning point in this unfolding tragedy. Driver found himself in handcuffs, arrested in Palo Alto on theft charges. However, his legal troubles didn't end there. He was transported back to Tuolumne County to face the allegations of molesting not only Nessler's son, but also 3 other young boys. As the trial progressed, a disturbing revelation came to light. Driver had previously pleaded guilty to multiple counts of sexual misconduct with boys in the San Jose area. Shockingly, he had received probation as his sentence, thanks to numerous letters from church members vouching for his character. Elena Nessler's life had taken a tumultuous journey, from the picturesque landscapes of Liberia's gold fields to the grim reality of welfare checks and wood chopping in California. The discovery of her son's torment at the hands of Daniel Mark Driver set in motion a harrowing chain of events that would ultimately lead to a shocking act of violence in a courtroom, thrusting her into the national spotlight and sparking a contentious debate about justice, revenge, and the protection of vulnerable children. On that fateful day, April 2nd, 1993, the nation was rocked by a shocking incident that would forever be etched in its memory. It was the day Elena Starr Nessler took matters into her own hands, ending the life of Daniel Mark Driver in the very heart of the Jamestown Justice Court. Driver, accused of heinous acts, stood accused of sexually abusing not just 1, but 5 young boys, one of whom was Nessler's own son, William, a tender 6-year-old at the time. With chilling precision, Nessler fired 5 shots, each one finding its mark in Driver's head, instantly extinguishing his life. This dramatic act of violence was the climax of a gruesome tale, one that had already seen Driver marked by a dark history of child molestation, including prior convictions. In the wake of this tragedy, the narrative surrounding Nessler took an unexpected turn. John Thurber, reporting for the Los Angeles Times, revealed a disconcerting detail. Nessler had been under the influence of methamphetamine when she took Driver's life. This revelation shattered the sympathetic image her defense had carefully crafted. Her defense team had portrayed her as a protective mother pushed to the brink, but now the portrait was marred. The legal battle that followed was arduous, spanning 3.5 long years of trials and appeals before Nessler ultimately pleaded guilty to voluntary manslaughter. Her incarceration began in 1993 and ended in 1997 when she was released back into the world. The sympathetic image of Nessler that had initially been painted began to crack shortly after the crime. The revelation of her drug use and a previous criminal record emerged as scars on her character. At the age of 18, she had faced a conviction for auto theft and had spent months within the walls of a California Youth Authority facility. It seemed the layers of her life were more complex than they initially appeared. However, despite the tarnished image and her troubled past, Nessler's story continued to capture the nation's attention. In a surprising twist, a television movie titled Judgment Day: The Ellie Nessler Story was produced, shedding light on the harrowing events. Even in the face of controversy, some staunch supporters stood by her side, sporting bumper stickers and t-shirts bearing the provocative slogan, "Nice shooting, Ellie." The divide in public opinion was stark. Some hailed Ellie Nessler as a protective mother driven to her actions by the unbearable thought of her traumatized son having to testify in open court against his abuser. They saw her as a symbol of maternal instinct pushed to the extreme. However, there were those who vehemently criticized her, accusing her of taking the law into her own hands, disregarding the established legal system. Her fate was sealed in the courtroom, where she was sentenced to a decade behind bars for her actions. But this was not the end of her tumultuous legal journey. An appeal based on juror misconduct eventually led to her release after serving just 3 years of her sentence. Yet, Nessler's entanglement with the law was far from over. In July 2002, she found herself on the wrong side of the legal system once again. This time, she was convicted for purchasing a staggering 10,000 pseudoephedrine tablets, a key ingredient in the illicit production of methamphetamine. The consequence was a 6-year prison sentence. It wasn't until 2006 that she tasted freedom once more, granted an early release from the confines of the Central California Women's Facility in Chowchilla. In 2002, Ellie Nessler found herself on the wrong side of the law once again, this time facing charges related to the sale and possession of methamphetamine. Her conviction led to a stint behind bars, but her journey through the justice system took an unexpected turn when she was released in 2006. However, her time out of confinement was short-lived. In December 2008, nearly 3 years after her release, tragedy struck once more. Ellie Nessler succumbed to breast cancer at the age of 56. Her passing occurred at UC Davis Medical Center in Sacramento, as confirmed by Phyllis Brown, the hospital's public information officer. The exact cause of death was not disclosed, but it was widely known that she had been battling breast cancer since 1994. Ellie Nessler's life was a tumultuous one, marked by controversy, legal entanglements, and a fierce motherly love. Her story garnered national attention, and in 1999, it was immortalized in a television film titled Judgment Day, The Ellie Nessler Story, with Christine Lottie portraying her. As for her son, Willie Nessler, his life took a troubling trajectory in the aftermath of the courtroom tragedy that changed their family forever. While his mother was incarcerated for taking the law into her own hands, Willie was raised by his aunt. During his formative years and well into adulthood, he found himself entangled with the law repeatedly. The cycle of legal troubles seemed unending. Willie landed in juvenile hall, teenage work camps, and eventually jail as an adult. Over the course of 5 years, he faced the law's wrath, being arrested by sheriff's deputies and booked into county jail on no less than 18 occasions. The charges against him ranged from robbery to drug-related offenses, painting a grim picture of his struggles with the law. In a tragic turn of events, Willie Nessler's life took a deadly turn in 2005. He was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison for a gruesome act, stomping a man to death. This fatal altercation arose from a dispute over tools involving David Davis, whom Willie had allowed to live on the family property. Shockingly, Willie Nessler killed Davis within an hour of being released early for good behavior from a previous 60-day sentence, which had stemmed from an earlier assault on Davis. Currently incarcerated at High Desert State Prison near Susanville, Willie Nessler remained connected to his mother's life, even from behind bars. Terry Thornton, a spokeswoman for the State Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, revealed that he was aware of his mother's deteriorating health. Willie had maintained communication with her as long as her condition allowed, and had also reached out to family members in the days leading up to her passing. In the wake of Ellie Nessler's death, Willie Nessler expressed his desire to attend his mother's funeral, but his request was denied. Gary Plauch. Leon Gary Plauch, born on November 10, 1945, and passing away on October 20, 2014, is remembered for a shocking and highly publicized incident in American history. In 1984, Plauch fatally shot Jeff Doucet, a man who had abducted and sexually assaulted his own son, Jody. The incident unfolded on March 16, 1984, when Plauch, armed with a revolver, confronted Doucet. What's remarkable is that the entire confrontation was captured on camera by a local news crew. Gary Plauch, a Baton Rouge, Louisiana native, was born on November 10, 1945, and tragically met his end on October 20, 2014, at the age of 68, also in Baton Rouge. He was an American through and through. At the heart of his story lies an event that would become his infamous legacy, the killing of Jeffrey Doucet. At the time of this incident, Plauch was separated from his wife June and was the father of 4 children. His life took an unimaginable turn during 1983 and 1984, when his 11-year-old son Jody was enrolled in karate lessons. These martial arts classes were being taught by none other than Jeffrey Doucet, a 25-year-old instructor with a dark and disturbing secret. This seemingly ordinary set of circumstances would soon spiral into a harrowing and life-altering event that would captivate the nation and spark intense debates about justice, morality, and the lengths a parent would go to protect their child. For over a year, Doucet had been subjecting young Jody to horrific sexual abuse, betraying the trust that should have existed between a teacher and his student. The horrifying climax of this dreadful saga unfolded on February 14, 1984, when Doucet, in a brazen act, kidnapped Jody. He took the young boy to a motel in Anaheim, California, far away from their home in Baton Rouge. There, Doucet subjected Jody to further unimaginable horrors, sexually assaulting and molesting him. It was a nightmarish ordeal, and for Jody, the world had become a terrifying place. Back in Baton Rouge, Jody's sudden disappearance triggered a nationwide manhunt. The entire country was gripped by the harrowing headlines, with parents everywhere feeling the collective fear and anguish of what might happen to their own children. However, amid this darkness, a glimmer of hope emerged. Jody was allowed by Ducey to make a collect call to his mother from the motel. It was a pivotal moment that would ultimately lead to justice. As the collect call reached Jody's mother, the wheels of law enforcement sprang into action. California police swiftly descended upon the motel, armed with the crucial information provided by the call. Astonishingly, they managed to apprehend Ducey without resistance or incident. This arrest marked a moment of triumph in a deeply troubling and heart-wrenching case. March 1st, 1984 would forever be etched in the Ploche family's memory as the day when Jody was finally reunited with his family in the familiar embrace of Louisiana. However, as the ordeal drew to a close, the scars it left behind were far from healed. The Ploche family had endured a nightmare that no family should ever have to face. In the aftermath of these traumatic events, the Ploche family found themselves thrust into the national spotlight. News television crews descended upon them, eager to hear their story. In a candid interview, Gary Ploche, having heard the horrifying reports of Ducey's actions during Jody's captivity, couldn't help but express a profound sense of helplessness. The unimaginable suffering his son had endured was beyond words. This poignant moment not only encapsulated the deep pain and anguish that had consumed the Ploche family, but also set the stage for a legal and moral dilemma that would captivate the nation. Gary Ploche, in his desperate act of vengeance, had taken matters into his own hands, altering the course of both his life and Ducey's. March 29, 1984, was a day etched in the memories of many, especially in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. It was the day when the consequences of one man's actions would reverberate across the nation, leaving questions of justice, vengeance, and morality in its wake. The stage was set at the Baton Rouge Metropolitan Airport, where a somber atmosphere hung heavy. American Airlines Flight 595 had just landed, bringing with it a passenger whose presence had ignited a powder keg of emotions. Jeffrey Ducey, a 25-year-old bearded karate instructor, was disembarking in handcuffs, accused of the unthinkable, the abduction and sexual abuse of a young boy, Jody Ploche. Among the crowd, Gary Ploche stood there, a father with a score to settle. Ducey had not just been any karate instructor, he had been the teacher of Ploche's 3 sons, including Jody. As the deputies escorted Ducey through the airport lobby, the TV cameras captured every moment. But it was a sign on the wall, warning against knives, mace, and guns that would soon be overshadowed by an act of raw, unrestrained vengeance. In a split second, Ploche spun away from a bank of payphones, his .38 caliber revolver aimed squarely at Ducey's head. The deafening shot that followed echoed through the airport and would later be witnessed by millions on the nightly news. With the pull of the trigger, the life of Jeffrey Ducey came to a sudden, violent end. It was a moment that stunned the nation, a moment that had been caught on camera for all to see. The shockwave rippled through the airport, and the shouts of Major Mike Barnett, a burly sheriff's deputy, pierced the air. He had been the first officer to lose a prisoner on live television since Jack Ruby shot Lee Harvey Oswald. Barnett lunged at Ploche, disarming the man whose son he had helped track all the way to California. The officers who had immediately grabbed hold of Ploche recognized him, and in their shock and disbelief, they repeatedly asked, "Gary, why? Why, Gary?" In the midst of this chaos, Ploche, his voice filled with anguish, wept, "If somebody did it to your kid, you'd do it too." The weight of his actions, fueled by a father's love and anger, hung heavily in the air. It was a moment that would haunt many, raising profound questions about the lengths a parent would go to protect their child. Ploche, the amiable heavy equipment salesman turned avenger, was swiftly taken into custody. Ducey, on the other hand, clung to life, but not for long. The gunshot wound to his head would prove fatal, and he succumbed to his injuries the following day. Within a day, Ploche found himself out on $100,000 bond, posted by a friend who believed in the depths of his anguish. His lawyer, Foster Foxy Sanders, took a unique approach, committing Ploche to a psychiatric ward. Sanders painted a picture of a distraught father who firmly believed that his son had been subjected to sexual abuse at the hands of Ducey. Sanders confidently declared, "He won't do one day in jail, not when all the details come out." As a feisty candidate for district attorney, Sanders championed Ploche's cause, even brandishing a copy of The Gay Advocate, the homosexual weekly that Ploche alleged Ducey had given to his 12-year-old son Jody. In the aftermath of this shocking incident, Baton Rouge, a city nestled along the Mississippi River, saw the birth of an unlikely hero. In a place where passions ran deep for crawfish, LSU bells, gator hunts, and family bonds, Gary Ploche became a symbol of a father's unwavering love for his child. Ad hoc juries, from strangers on the street to patrons at the Cotton Club, where Ploche had once enjoyed Miller Lights, seemed to acquit him in their hearts. In a community where homophobia held sway, the nuances of Ploche's case sparked passionate debates about justice and morality. Gary Ploche's legal journey took a surprising turn after the fatal shooting of Jeffrey Ducey. Initially charged with second-degree murder, Ploche ultimately agreed to a plea bargain, entering a no-contest plea to manslaughter. The outcome of this agreement was a 7-year suspended sentence, accompanied by 5 years of probation separation and a requirement to complete 300 hours of community service, which he fulfilled by 1989. Crucial to Plosh's case were psychological reports that shed light on the disturbing events leading up to the tragedy. It was revealed that Doucet had been abusing Jody for months prior to the kidnapping, a fact that weighed heavily on Plosh's mental state. Plosh's defense argued that he had temporarily descended into a psychotic state, driven by the horrifying knowledge of his son's abuse. Uzi's analysis also exposed Doucet's manipulative nature. He had exploited the rift in the Plosh family due to Gary's separation from his wife, cleverly infiltrating their lives. In the end, Judge Frank Saya concluded that imprisoning Plosh would serve no purpose and that the risk of him committing another crime was virtually non-existent. The shocking video capturing the moment Plosh took Doucet's life became widely known. It made its way into television programs and documentaries, including the 1994 shockumentary Traces of Death 2 and Michael Moore's 2002 film Bowling. For Columbine, the footage also found its place on YouTube, amassing over 20 million views. While some uncensored versions were taken down in March 2020 and replaced with censored versions, the original video remains accessible on YouTube and other platforms. One version even appeared on the television series Anatomy of Crime, which aired in 2000 on Court TV and was produced by John Langley, the creator of Cops. In an interview at the age of 67, Plosh made a startling revelation. He expressed no remorse for his actions, asserting that he would do the same if faced with a similar situation once more. Sadly, the story of Gary Plosh came to a close with his health deteriorating. He suffered a stroke in 2011, and 3 years later in 2014, he passed away in a nursing home just 3 weeks shy of his 69th birthday. The legacy of this tragic tale endures, with the release of Why Gary? Why? The Jody Plosh Story by Jody Plosh in August 2019, offering further insight into the complex web of emotions and events surrounding this unforgettable chapter in Baton Rouge's history. We've seen parents taking justice into their hands. However, we're pondering one question: what would you do in their shoes? Hit the card on your screen for more gripping videos.